Hi, I'm Matt with Schematical, and today I'm going to be benchmarking Next.js running in a Lambda, which is what is currently running Schematical.com, against Next.js running in an ECS Docker container. We're also going to do some interesting experiments with the memory size that we got from my esteemed colleague. I say that, I've never met the guy. Seems like a nice person, but Yann, I'm just going to call him Yann C. I'm sorry, I don't actually have a video of you pronouncing your last name. But Yann's kind of the serverless expert and had some interesting feedback with our conversation where I was pointing this out. So he had some suggestions and I am going to make those on this video. We're going to see if they work. If this is your first time viewing the channel, I'm Matt with Schematical. I consult on things in the cloud. I help CTOs running on AWS sleep at night, and I run a lot of different crazy cloud experiments. Also, I've got merch. So if you're a longtime viewer, you might find this interesting. Got merch, posters and whatnot for the comics. I also do comics about the cloud and technology and whatnot. So you can get those on the website, schematical.com/comics. Coming soon, schematicalcomics.com will also be an option. I've got to stop buying random domains, it turns out. With that said, without further ado, let's dive on into this. So right now, I have dev.schematical.com migrated over to ECS, and just plain old schematical.com is running fairly slowly on a Lambda. To give you guys some perspective here, the Lambda durations, let's just look at like the last week here. Lambda durations can get up to 8K, and the average duration is actually really high. But Next.js has a pretty substantial boot time, and it's not being invoked like a normal Lambda. We're actually converting traffic to port 80 and then passing it into a server that's running. So every time this thing does a cold boot, it's taking quite a while. Good news is it's cheap. Bad news is, if I boast on the internet that I'm kind of good at working with servers and cloud stuff, I probably should have a fast website. So cheap Matt, you lose out. Unfortunately, I don't have a great set of benchmarks for ECS quite yet, because if there's not requests coming in, it doesn't actually record the request time. So let's see if I can zoom out a little bit here to 1 week, and we can see that most of the requests coming in are done in fractions of a second. So we've got 0.1 seconds. This isn't milliseconds, it's seconds. So we're talking tenth of a second, just about. The highest one at 0.12. So we're looking way faster than its counterpart here, which is measured in milliseconds, but at 10 seconds, roughly, the highest. So that's wild. That should not be. So before I swap us over, I am going to run some tests. And since I've already rewritten the Terraform for this to, if I run a Terraform apply right now, it's going to blow this out of the water. So we're just going to screw around on here. Normally I make my changes via Terraform, but let's see what the first change that Yann suggested was. By the way, if you haven't, you should check out Yann's stuff. So let's see. Now this seems pretty standard. So I have dev.schematical.com set up here, and I've got the network tab open. Let's take a look at prod first. And let's take a look here. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh this right here. Pending, and this is the waterfall view if you aren't familiar with it, but right here you can see the initial load of it from a cold boot is all the way up to here. Let's stop because otherwise it's going to keep getting shorter. But that is 1.57 seconds. So that's pretty long. That's, in my book, unacceptable. But I mean, this isn't actually round robin from the cloud. This is, I mean, this could be my own internet or something like that, because it does have to pass through the internet. Okay, now it's warm, probably 1.27 seconds. 1 second, see, now that it's warmed up, it's doing better. 1.23 seconds, we're down to 8 seconds. The problem is when people come at it cold, which happens a lot because my website doesn't get that much traffic. 232 seconds, that was really high, considering we're just rendering the home page there. 1 second, and one more just for fun, 942 milliseconds, 0.9 seconds. So let's check out dev.schematical.com, which is running on an ECS task. This is one ECS task. It's the smallest task you got, one CPU. So dev, 129 milliseconds. You can see, compared to the other ones, not nearly as big when we look at the waterfall view. Let's go again, 97 milliseconds. Less than a tenth of a second. 116 milliseconds. Way faster. Way faster. 273. So this is the slowest one at a quarter of a second. 141. 151, 130, 142. I mean, it's pretty consistent. And again, back here, I don't know if it's cooled off yet, but over a second. Back at Lambda running on schematical.com. All right, so here's the whole post he did on it. He thinks 128 is not enough, and I agree with it, and that's just the default. He's got a great headline here where he's blaming the tools for it, and in reality I should have thought about this earlier. So this is interesting. A function runs 1 million times a month with an average execution time of 100 milliseconds. At 1024 it'll cost a lot more. So he thinks 1024 megabytes is a good default. So let's go ahead, and normally I'd use Terraform for this, but we're going to knock this thing out of the water anyway. He didn't mention anything about ephemeral storage. I'm not going to change that right now. Timeout of 30 seconds, which is pretty darn high for a RESTful endpoint. Let's give that a minute to propagate. Through the magic of editing, I'm going to speed that up.
A few moments later.
All right, here we are a couple minutes later. Let's see if this has an effect. Okay, initial one, 136. Holy mackerel. Let's just make sure that's the right one. Look at that, 288. 370. So we definitely have a positive improvement here. And I still am going to try one more thing before we go nuts with this. 278. We're down to a quarter second. Now we're not down to a tenth of a second yet, but we're at literally 1 millisecond off of a quarter a second right now. So that indeed had a big effect. Now we are running warm right now, so I'm going to give this a minute to cool.
A few moments later.
It's been a handful of minutes, and let's see what the benchmark looks like now. Hopefully this is a cold boot. Let's send it. We've got 640 milliseconds, so 0.64 seconds. After that, we're down to 275, so it's not as fast as before, but I'll be honest, it still feels faster. Let's try the consulting page. 210 milliseconds versus... Now this is interesting. Dev was slower on that one, but I guess I didn't do the consulting page. Let's do the consulting page. 238 versus 210. That time Schematical actually beat it. I'm kind of annoyed. I didn't think of this myself. Yann, you got me. I can't believe I didn't think to change that. Well, it takes a village. This will still be more cost effective. So, all right, 356. On average, it's still a little higher though. And for SEO purposes, I want the site as fast as I can. And of course, I've seen people click through it, they get annoyed when it's, oh gosh, the zoom's it's stuck too big. Oh man, all right, that's a good size. All right, so dev is still 229, 153, and 218. So Yann was right. Hashtag Yann was right. That's pretty much the end of the video. Now I've just got to decide if I want to roll forward with ECS, which I probably will still do, or do I just want to boot up? You know what? I should do a cost experiment. I may not make a full YouTube video out of it, but I'll probably make a short post out of it. Let's see what running it at the enhanced 1024 megabytes does. Should be interesting. So stay tuned if you're interested in hearing more about this. This is one of the nerdiest things I can do is benchmark Next.js inside of various ways to run on AWS, but that's what I do. So if you like that type of stuff, you want to learn more about AWS, you want to get the latest news on AWS read by me in 60-second shorts, subscribe, jump on the mailing list. There's some cool stuff on there. Seems people are really engaged on the mailing list, so I appreciate that. Without further ado, I'm Matt with Schematical, and I'll see you around. Cheers.